It's getting harder and harder to find an e-bike at an affordable price point, but Aipas is a company that is here to change that. This is the Aipas C1 Max Xpress, and the theme of this bicycle, in my experience, is a less expensive e-bike with more budget-friendly parts on it, but focused on details that just make sense and get the job done. It's got a powerful battery and motor, 28 mph top speed, and a comfortable design, but it does have less expensive parts on it to keep it at that lower price point. So, is this bike worth it in 2026, or is this something you should avoid and save your money for something else? Hello everyone, and welcome to the channel. My name is Lollipop, and today we're going to figure out if this relatively less expensive e-bike from Aipas, and I did confirm the pronunciation of the company is Aipas and not Aipas, but we're going to confirm if all of the details on paper translate to real life. And right away, before I start, I will mention that Aipas sent me this e-bike for a review video on my channel, but they did not have any influence over what I can or cannot say about it. And the benefit there is that I get a discount code to give all of you viewers. So if you are interested in this bike after my review video, go to the description below, click on that link, enter the code TOLOLLIPOPMTB during checkout to get some additional money off the bike. So let's get right into this review. I'm going to start off with the unboxing and assembly process, then talk about the pricing and move on to each and every single little detail and part on this bike and my opinions on all those parts as a former bicycle mechanic and e-bike mechanic as well. And then at the end, we'll take it out on the road and on some dirt pads and things like that so you can see how it rides. So for the unboxing and assembly, the bike comes in a pretty small box, so it's easy to move around and open. Overall, pretty normal assembly process. You do get a smaller box inside with some accessories like the toolkit, charger, zip ties, and other parts you gotta install on the bike like the rear rack. But that's still not too difficult. I personally always like to go through my e-bikes after assembling and just make sure every bolt is tight, grease the pedals and seat post, adjust the handlebar and grips and all that to make sure it's comfortable for me. And the main thing that takes some time is adjusting the brakes to make sure the rotors are not rubbing on the pads, which takes some patience, but that's normal for most bikes. At this point, I'll also mention that Aipas sent me their front and rear baskets to try on this bike. Installation is a breeze on the rear basket, and it's easy on the front too, but with front baskets on bicycles, you always got to make sure the cables don't hit the basket and get caught while turning the bike, which can be difficult with how many cables are on an e-bike. Ideally, you would just take the cables off and reroute them, but that's too much work, so I just zip tied them in certain places to make sure they don't get caught. Okay, now let's talk about pricing. The bike normally sells for $859 US currently on the Aipas website, so under $900, which is really good for an electric bicycle in 2026. Now, if you do want the extra baskets on this bike, that combo package will run you $949 US, so still under $1,000 for my exact model. Now let's jump into the features, starting with the frame design. The bike looks pretty good, nothing super beautiful or unique about the design, it just looks like an e-bike and works like one. Mine is the step-through version, so it's easier to get on and off of. You have the main side logo that fades from a dark gray to a light gray, some tattoo-like decals on the sides of the bike, and a logo in the front that's covered by my front basket right now. The only part of the design I'm not in love with is the rear section where you have all of these smoother tubing shapes going down at the side, and then at the very end they just get very flat and thick. Not a big deal, but it just looks more functional rather than well designed. My bike is in the white color, which looks nice and clean. It only comes in one frame size that fits riders from 5 foot 1 inch tall to 6 foot 5 inches, so nice wide range that fits me fine at 5 foot 8 inches tall, though for taller riders it may feel a bit smaller. The bike itself has a claimed weight of 74 pounds with the battery, but my bike actually weighs in at 84 pounds, and I weighed it about 8 times, so that's accurate, but it could be more due to the added baskets on mine. And it has a very large weight capacity of 500 pounds, which is impressive. One downside is that it does not have any mounts for a water bottle holder, which is strange for a bicycle. You can work around that with special mounts that strap on or something, but I just wish we got one somewhere. You have a kickstand on the left side of the bike. This isn't super sturdy or heavy duty, but it works good enough and keeps the bike from falling over. And back here, you also have the included rear rack. This is simple and works well. It's stable enough, so no concerns here. One nice touch with this rack that I surprisingly haven't seen before is that it came with the bolts and hardware to attach a basket or anything else you want, so I appreciate that. And while we're here, let's talk about these additional baskets. I'll put the dimensions on the screen, but the rear basket is super simple to install with those 4 included bolts. It can be installed further back so it doesn't hit the seat, but this position worked out fine for me, and it's a good size for holding a variety of items. The front basket is a bit smaller, which makes sense, but it's still pretty big, so definitely a very practical e-bike in this configuration. One last thing I'll mention is that the basket does come with an extension cable if you do want to move your front headlight to the front of the basket instead of being down here. I decided to leave it though since the basket doesn't really block the light, which is nice. On the left side of the bike, you also have your keyhole to remove the battery. So you insert the key, turn it once to unlock the battery, then twist the latch underneath the bike to let the battery fall out. The battery is designed well. It has an on-off button, which is good so it doesn't stay on all the time. And you can quickly check the battery life with a button on the side. Now, another nice design feature of this bike is that after putting the battery in the bike, you have your normal waterproof cover that you can open to charge the battery. But what's great is that you also have access to the on-off button for the battery, which is a small detail, but I love it since on other e-bikes, sometimes I put the battery in, realize I didn't turn the battery on, but there's no way to turn the button on without removing the battery again, which is inconvenient, so I like this design. The included charger is just normal and generic, no fan on here and not a fast charger either, so that's unfortunate, but expected at this price point. Okay, but for the tech features, let's start off with that battery. This is a 48 volt, 18 amp hour battery, so nice and powerful, and that's connected to a motor located in the rear wheel hub, which has a peak of 1,100 watts and 90 newton meters of torque. Rear hub motors are expected and common at lower priced e-bikes, but they do make the bike back heavy. I don't notice that weight as much on this overall heavier bike. And this combination does work well since you can reach a top speed of 28 miles per hour using pedal assist or the throttle, and a max range of 85 miles on eco mode or 36 miles on throttle only, which is pretty good. The bike comes with a cadence sensor, which in my opinion is not as good as a torque sensor since it feels a bit more laggy and less intuitive, but these are also very common and expected at this price. Okay, but moving up to the screen, to turn the bike on, you just hold the power button. The screen turns on pretty quickly and it flashes a bunch of numbers for some reason, but that's normal. After that, you can see your battery life on the top left, current speed in the middle, pedal assist level below that, which you can cycle through via the plus and minus buttons on the left controller, and then some info at the bottom of the screen like your odometer, trip, average speed, etc., which you can cycle through via the I button. Then, if you hold the minus button down, you get walk mode, which pushes your bike forward at about 2 miles per hour when you're holding that button down, which is nice for walking your bike. The throttle to accelerate this bike is actually on the right side, just a normal twist throttle here that works fine. You got a green button for the horn, and then you have all of your lighting buttons. My favorite feature on the screen area is definitely the front headlight button, since it's just a button that you click in to turn on and click off to turn off, which I just love. It's satisfying, works great, and is easy to use. Interestingly, there is also a button on the screen that you can press that implies that it would turn on the lights, but it doesn't actually do anything besides dim the screen and show you a light symbol. So maybe this feature is just not connected and they prefer you use the other button. And then below the light button are the turn signal switches, which work great, and I'm happy we have turn signals on this bike, but you can't tell they're on the screen, which is unfortunate, so keep that in mind to not accidentally leave your signals on. In terms of the actual lights, the front headlight looks more industrial, but the brightness and spread of light is great and easy to see while riding at night, so that's great to see. And the rear taillight is bright enough to be seen for sure, and it gets brighter and flashes when you're braking, so that's a good safety feature. And of course, the turn signals look great and can be easily seen as well. The rear basket covers up the lights a little bit, but I mentioned before that you can reattach the light to the back of the basket if you prefer. Alright, but finally done with the tech features, now let's talk about all of these normal bicycle parts. Starting with the suspension fork, this is generic and unbranded. It has a gloss black color, which is nice, but honestly it's pretty low end and doesn't do a whole lot. It feels more like a pogo stick and has a lockout to make it rigid, but this lockout only works if the fork is not pressed down at all. So it doesn't always work while riding and is overall not the best part on this bike. But it gets better with the wheels, which have gloss black plastic fenders on there, so that's great to see. Generic aluminum alloy rims, nothing special, but they work fine. And then we got Chow Yang branded tires that are 24 by 2.6 inches wide. So this bike does actually use a smaller 24-inch wheel size, which actually helps make it more maneuverable and easier for shorter riders. And the 2.6-inch width is a sweet spot since it's wide enough to run over potholes and ride trails, but narrow enough to not be super heavy and cumbersome, so good choice for the wheels. Next we got the brakes, which are normal generic mechanical disc brakes. The brake levers are good and have a long lever to grip onto, and the brake calipers actually also work pretty well considering they are mechanical. Typically I want to see hydraulic disc brakes on e-bikes since they have better stopping power, but I had no issue with these during my time riding, likely because of the smaller wheel size that's easier to stop, and the brakes come with 180mm wide brake rotors, so that's good to stop this bike as well. For the gears, we got a 7-speed drivetrain, so not many speeds to choose from. We have a large crankset in general, but relative to other e-bikes, this is actually a bit smaller and not as good at retaining high speed. That's paired to a 7-speed freewheel in the back with a more narrow gear range, which isn't the biggest deal for e-bikes if you use the electric assist, but just know that you won't always be able to pedal this bike as easily if you're trying to go super fast or up a steeper hill and not using as much of the electric power. The derailleur is the lowest end Shimano Tourney TZ, which actually works fine for this bike. I don't really notice it as much, but it is a lower end option that will break more easily and wear out quicker, but these are relatively cheap to replace. And finally up here we have the Shimano 7-speed shifter that we see on a lot of e-bikes around this price point, and on even more expensive e-bikes around $1,500 or so, so not bad to see it here. It works well for this bike, so no issues. And lastly, let's talk about the finishing components. We got a generic normal seat on here. It's comfortable enough and I'm personally fine with it, but it could be a bit wider and more comfy for this bike. It does have suspension built in, but I don't really notice that as much on my rides. Overall though, the bike is comfortable, so you should be fine. Then the stem is great because it has a lot of adjustability. You can angle it at a lot of different points, but also slide it up or down to get the perfect positioning. The handlebar sweeps back a bit for a more comfortable grip, and it looks nice too, so I like that. And then finally the grips have a harder rubber, so they are less comfortable, but at least they stay in place and don't move around while riding. And that is it for all of the parts and specs on this bike. Now let's go show you how it rides. All right, riding the Aipas C1 Max XT Xpress e-bike. Has a long name there, but I have it on pedal assist 5. We're just gonna max it out right here, make a quick right turn on this strip right here, and let's max it out. One thing that's cool about this bike is that the throttle is tied to the pedal assist, so whatever pedal assist level you're on, that's how much throttle it's gonna give you. So right now I'm almost hitting 26. Let's test the brakes. Mechanical disc brakes don't stop you quite as fast, but the harder you push down on them, the better they'll stop you, and they're definitely fine for this type of bike. We could have easily reached 28. I've reached 28 before on this bike already. Gonna jump off a curb here. Honestly, not too bad, off the curbs. I mentioned that the suspension fork isn't the most high end, and that's mainly because I can't even lock it out right now if I wanted to. It has to be fully unsquished for me to lock it out, and that's kind of hard to do. So it's more of for show, in my opinion. It does do a little bit of work, but I think the tires are the main things doing work for you on this bike for sure. Oh, one thing I'll point out right away is that this rack might look a little bit diagonal. It's not perfectly straight welded onto the bike, but that's kind of normal on less expensive bicycle models. Woo, jeez. All right, got a stop sign right there, so let's take a break. Yeah, it stops pretty fast. Maneuverability is pretty good on this bike. It's got that smaller wheel size, so that makes it easier to actually turn around and go. Yeah, definitely pushing some limits on this thing, and it's handling it great. Of course, we can take it on some trails, so let me just hop right off of this. It's bumpy right here. Obviously, you're going to be hearing some of the rattle on this bike. It's not like the quietest thing. There's a lot of moving parts, especially with that suspension fork that's so just pogo sticky. But it handles it, and for the most part it's not too loud of a bike. The battery and motor on this guy are louder than higher end e-bikes and stuff like that, but it's pretty normal for e-bikes at this price point. Nothing too crazy. I'm on throttle 5, by the way. Let me kick it down to 2, and you can hear that it's very, very quiet. And it's still a little bit loud, but it's nothing too bad. Okay, so for my final thoughts and review of the Aipas C1 Max, like I said at the beginning, I feel like it's a perfect bike for someone who's on a budget that just wants something to get from A to B that just works. It doesn't have all of the high-end new features and the most striking design and all that, but if you want a decent quality e-bike with good features for under $1,000 and great power, great torque and all of that, then this is the bike for you. Now, my main downsides for this bike are that front suspension fork, not really doing a whole lot for you, being kind of pogo sticky and not the best. Luckily, the tires do make up for that. Like, I still feel pretty comfortable on this bike, and the seat has a little bit of that suspension to it. The drivetrain could use a little bit better gear ratios for going on those higher speed levels, like pedal assist 4 and 5 to help you out. But, otherwise, you're pretty much only using the electric assist, which is also fine. In that case, you're getting an e-bike, that's kind of expected. I guess the seat could be a tad more comfortable. I do like it overall, but I've had better seats on different e-bikes as well. The grips are definitely a little bit on the harder side, but those are things you can easily swap out that do not cost a lot of money. But the pros of this bike are really in those little details, like the on-off button on the side right here that you can turn the battery on and off with. The front headlight being relatively bright, the adjustable stem that can angle up and down and slide up and down to give you the perfect height for you. Oh, the included bolts in the rear rack, that was a nice touch. The brakes are entry-level mechanical, but they work and they stop you. The bike is heavier, maybe even 84 pounds on my bathroom scale, but you don't feel it. It still feels like a relatively nimble bike, and it helps with those 24-inch wheels, which I originally thought would be a downside, might feel too small, not as good for taller riders, but it actually helps make the bike a lot more maneuverable, and it still carries that same 28 mile per hour top speed. So yeah, overall, not a lot of downsides and a lot of things that just work great for the price point. This is a great bike for someone who wants something entry level with good features, good specs, and everything that'll last a while and won't really break the bank at the same time. So if you're using it for commuting, using it for some sort of activity that requires you to go back and forth a lot and not have the highest end parts on it in case you're worried about it getting stolen or something like that, but still works well enough, then this is a great bike overall. But that is it for this video, everyone. Thank you all so much for watching, liking, and subscribing. Let me know if you have any further questions down in the comment section below. But with that, remember to keep biking out there.